Okay, guys, thank you for joining me on Tuesday night. We're back on Tuesday night again for a live stream. I didn't have a conflict anywhere in the state with a public presentation today, so we'll get into our kind of first live stream regularly scheduled on a Tuesday. Now, one thing that I'm probably going to do is I'm assuming that I'm going to be on schedule next week with another Tuesday live stream starting roughly like I am tonight around 5:30. And to some extent, I think I'm just going to use that live stream as a way to kind of preview. I'll still take questions, of course, but I'm going to use it as a way to preview the elections and what to watch for on the following Tuesday. Since the following Tuesday is election night, I may do another live stream the day before election in my regular studio here, but I'm probably going to try to hop in on another broadcast with some other people, possibly up in the King County area. I don't know if I've decided where I'm going to be at. I kind of want to see if I can get into the Let's Go Washington event, wherever they end up holding it up there. I'm assuming they're going to do something, and if they do, I'd love to be there. It'd be fun to see exactly at least be there at that time. I don't know how many of these initiatives are going to pass, but I have to sense that some number of them, if not all of them, are going to pass. And so it'd be exciting to be in the room when they get that information. That being said, I just had a couple other things. One of the things I do try to start out the live stream with is a little bit of a calendar update. And I don't have quite as many things coming up here, but I will be at the Washington Policy Center dinner up in Bellevue this Friday. If you happen to be there and you spot me, please come on over and say hi. I'd love to see you. I really appreciate it when people come up and see me or tell me that they watch these live streams, or that you watch my videos, or that you subscribe to my channel. It's actually kind of good feedback for me. I really appreciate it. I do have a lot of strangers now that I don't know at all that approach me at events or just actually in public at Costco or Fred Meyer's or other places, as was a gas station I know recently, wherever I happen to go, is that I know that they're watching the videos, and so I always like that. But feel free to come on up. I really do appreciate that, and I like your feedback. Tell me what you don't like. Tell me any critiques you have of the show. I can only do so much, but I'm happy to always continuously look for improvement, and I'm sure that there's plenty of opportunities for it. Also, I know I'm going to be November 4th, I'm going to be, which is the day before Election Day, so Monday of next, or 2 weeks from now, roughly. I know I'm going to be in Clark County. I think it's at a Patriots United event. I think that's what it is. I was originally planning to do a promo video for that. For whatever reason, we just haven't had the time to promote that out the way. I think it's just been more a coordination issue on my part. But I am planning to be there. I'm excited to be there. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of you who might be there as well. And that'll give me a little bit more of an opportunity to see people right before the election. And, this is just going to be, I still think this is kind of a crazy election season. And everybody has their predictions, but I just don't know for sure what's going to go on. So let's just jump right in here. Let's look at some of these comments. Just a quick reminder for those of you who do have questions and you want to ask me a question, just leave that in the comment section, possibly down below or on the side. If you're watching this video during the live stream, you'll see it on the side, usually, depending on how your setup is. And you can type in a question, and if you say @We the Governed, so it shows up like this question does down here from Ben, then it's easier for me to kind of pick it out, as people tend to be scrolling through those questions. There's a tendency in the comment section for people to respond back and forth. That's perfectly fine. That's great. I encourage it, but it's harder for me to spot the questions sometimes when that's happening. So if you do this, it makes it just a little bit easier, a little bit less easier for me to spot it, a little less likely I'm going to skip through it or possibly miss it. I'm not trying to skip any questions here. It doesn't mean I can always answer your question, but I will do my best to answer it if I can. So one of the things, real quick, before I kind of jump into Ben's question and the many other questions it looks like are starting to pile up here, I really had an unusual opportunity this Saturday to do a video interview with Brian Haywood from Let's Go Washington. And actually, it wasn't initially kind of focused on that. It was more, I wanted to test out a potential studio location up in the King County area. And it was way fancier than what I have here or what you see typically on my show. So I just wanted to see what it'd be like. The owners of that studio were willing to kind of give me a test window time. I think they do a lot of filming. and they happen to have some blank space or blank time in their schedule on a Saturday morning. And so what I wanted to do, if I could, was to try to get Brian Haywood there so I could interview him about the initiatives. I've interviewed him before a few times. Any regular viewers of the show know. I mean, this goes back years. And actually, it's interesting. If you look back at my first interviews with Brian Haywood, probably maybe 3 years ago now, but whenever that was, the first interviews that I did those, you can really see a big... just a difference in Brian's probably experience doing interviews at this point in time. And it was kind of interesting, seeing the progression of the whole initiative process, the failed effort the first year with the 11 initiatives, and I know I interviewed him what that started. The successful effort in the very beginning before they knew they were going to be successful on the 6 initiatives last year. I interviewed him after they were successful, and so it's been kind of fun. And of course, some of these are different locations, whenever I could squeeze him in. The last time I interviewed him, I know, was in his barn, and I had to pay a couple of guys to be there to do the video filming. And if you kind of know, I'm on the super budget program when I run this operation. So a lot of times I'm kind of a charity case, and people are donating videographers to me or spaces to me, and so I felt very fortunate to be able to have an opportunity to test a video, kind of 3-camera standard interview format at a really nice studio, nicer than anything I think I've ever been able to do any of my videos on before, and test that out. So it was fun for me to do that. Just so you know, I kind of screwed up. I was trying to do a simultaneous live stream of the whole thing so that you could just unedited, and then my hope was then to take the final video and then cut it into some clips. And so I was able to do the whole live stream video, but what I screwed up on was I meant to have it go live while we were filming. And instead, I didn't. If you know how it works here, I had the private button clicked on, and I was so distracted with other things I didn't notice. So anyway, I screwed up on that. I did post the whole thing though, and you can see the entire video on my YouTube channel in the live stream area. In fact, I think it's a live stream right before this, but it actually didn't air live. I just didn't realize it until after the fact, and then we hit live, and it was up there. And I know, there's been, I don't know if it's been 1,500 or some odd people have actually seen it since then, or at least you started to look at it, but that's the long version. And so I had to have my video guys just do a little bit of editing so that I could take clips and try to break that into logical clips and start putting that up on my channel as video content. And so I was able to get 2 of those up before the live stream started today. And I think what I'm going to try to do is when the live stream's done, I'll just stay here and keep working on at least a couple more of these to get them up. And maybe I'll finish the last couple tomorrow. But just trying to get the content out there so that people have it. I know people like that. Again, with any of the videos I do, feel free, if you got something there that you like, or there's some content there, especially when I'm doing an interview with somebody, you have my permission, take a clip of that, share it widely, or use that clip of the video. Brian's was, what I really liked about this video studio was their way to actually zoom in on him. And just to get his feedback and his information as far as what the history for each of the initiatives, the overview, things that are happening that people don't necessarily see out there on the front end. And I think that's really an interesting process for the average person just to see what's going on. So Brian Haywood's an impactful person right now with all the work that he's done for Let's Go Washington. And I just can't be denied that having 4 significant initiatives under the Vote Yes, Pay Less program on the ballot is a big deal. And as anybody knows from my video that I did last week, that I did vote for all 4 of those initiatives, no doubt about it. Nobody needs to convince me to vote on them. I already did, but I still think it's interesting because some people, when I filmed him on Saturday, a lot of people still didn't have their ballots, but I wasn't able to break these videos up and start getting them out there until today. Use them as you see fit. Feel free to share them with others, or watch them for yourself if you just want to be interested. But I do have 2 of them up right now. I think the initial intro video, and I have a video of the 2066 Stop the Natural Gas Ban. So both of those are up. All right, let's just get into your questions right now. I may get distracted as I go along and go down a couple other rabbit holes, but let's just go right into this. So the first question here is Ben, and Ben, looks like you took over for Thunderstriker here today, and you're asking a couple of questions right out of the gate, and I love it. So let's get in here on this. First question, do you have a recommendation on who to vote for between Paul Crisali and Andrew Skach? I think Skach for King County Superior Court. And King County... KSD, King County District Proposition 1, should I vote yes or no on the levy? Well, here's my general take. Let's start with your second question first. On King County Proposition number 1, general default is if you haven't really studied it and you're unsure, always vote no on a tax increase. It is rare, especially in King County, that reasonable tax increases are proposed. And in fact, the majority of the time, they're not reasonable, and that money's just going to go wasted. Default positions always vote no on a levy, unless there's just something about it that's so unusual and so needed and so necessary that it's worth voting on. There was actually, I think Kent a while ago had a public safety levy. This is a number of years ago, pre-COVID, I remember, and that levy was actually pretty reasonable. The problem that year it failed actually because the school levy for the Kent School District had turned out to be a fraud, and the superintendent had colluded with board members at the time to conceal the financial distress that the Kent School District was in, and people were so upset after they passed the levy, and then they immediately laid off teachers and cut programs, like immediately right afterwards, and then they suddenly revealed the secret bad financial situation the school district was in. If COVID hadn't come along, actually, that would have been a much bigger scandal, but regardless, that happened. And then people were so upset about it, they voted no for the public safety levy, and they should have done the opposite. They should have voted no on the Kent School District levy and yes on the public safety levy, but that's what happened. So I would say, when in doubt, vote no on that one. The question about the judge is a good question, because I looked actually... I'm hoping to do a video tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to borrow another person's studio because I don't have any more time that I can fit in here today, to do a video just on judges in Washington State. And this is significant because, right now where I live in Thurston County, I didn't have any Superior Court judges that had any contested races on the ballot this cycle. But there are a number of them around the state. Not a huge number, not as many as there should be. I mentioned in my video on how I voted, obviously we had one Supreme Court judge that was up for election. And so in that case, obviously Larson was a better choice, Dave Larson running for Supreme Court Justice. But two of them were uncontested. Our appellate court judge was uncontested. And then looking around the state, I've noticed there are a couple of, some people, good people, are trying to jump into these judge races, and they're very hard to distinguish yourself from an Inslee appointee who's a nut job, or who's just dishonest, or who may not believe math or English is real and can't identify what a woman is. And we really just need more common sense in the judiciary. And so I was just starting to dig into some of these races. I looked at this one, and on one hand, I would vote for Andrew because he's the guy challenging the Superior Court justice. But with looking at his legal background, one of the questions I had about his background was that he may actually be worse than the incumbent judge. I can't say that for sure, but it came up as a question when I looked at some of his background. So sorry I can't give you a lot more detail on that. I don't have a strong opinion in that race, but it's possible that Paul is the better choice for that judge position. And I hate to say that because he was an Inslee appointee and been their incumbent, but the guy running against him, I can't tell enough about who he is. Ben, your second question here, just saying, I saw in the news that 2 of the initiatives are on track to not pass. Are voters really that dumb, or is this a bad poll? It's probably a bad poll, honestly. And it's probably dishonest. Remember, the billionaires that are running the No campaign are spending lots of money in the media, and so they're influencing which stories are actually the traditional media. And so they're influencing which stories the media covers. They're influencing the way editorials are written, and there's a lot of phony polling out there. My gut tells me, based on some of the polls that I've seen that I think are probably based somewhat on reality, is that it looks like 3 initiatives are pretty, they're polling really, really well. And the only one I can't tell where it's at is the I-2124, which is the opt-out of the long-term healthcare scam. My political assessment as to why that's the case, because that's that's the one initiative. I mean, the Seattle Times is kind of backed into a corner, and they felt like they had to endorse some initiative. So they did endorse that. the long-term care tax scam was such a idiotic and poorly conceived, incompetent, fraudulent sort of piece of legislation that even the legislature and Governor Inslee delayed it for years in implementation. The Seattle Times came out with multiple editorials about how bad a law it was. The legislature refused to fix it. It's essentially just an SEIU kickback scheme where SEIU, the union, has decided to create this stupid long-term care, fraudulent, fake long-term care scheme so that they can extract cash out of your paycheck and eventually get it set up so that nobody can provide long-term care unless they're an SEIU member, even if you're doing it with a family member. And that's the kickback scheme to themselves. It's a long-term investment in their future existence as a money-grifting union operation. And getting the government to do your hard work for you is half the battle for those guys. Well, SEIU decided when they looked at all four of these initiatives, they oppose all of them, but they can only really dump enough money to fight on one of them. And so SEIU went all in on this one and decided to leave the others to be fought over by other people. And so SEIU is better at running a ground game, and they're usually a bit more deceptive than average in trying to run their anti-campaigns. And the point is just to confuse everybody, just like the language that the Attorney General puts in, just like the impact statements. I mean, they're really just trying to confuse people so that you don't vote yes to pay less. We'll see. And in that initiative, interestingly enough, too, it's not even a repeal. It's just giving people the option to get out. Remember, the government prefers the Hotel California, where once you check in, you can never check out of whatever bad, stupid, expensive, and ridiculous scheme they put together. And they want to make it as difficult as possible for you to get out of it. This is the history of government programs going back for over a century, so there's nothing new about it, but it is something to be aware of. So I just don't trust those polls. They're all biased and corrupted generally, and it's also really hard to poll on this. And frankly, right now, probably about 20% of the people who are going to vote already voted. So I don't know. It'd be very difficult for me to be able to accurately look at a poll by anybody and know for sure where it's at. But my general assessment is that they're all doing pretty well. And if they weren't doing that well, then you wouldn't have seen Governor Inslee recruit Gavin Newsom, the California governor, another failing governor and another terrible guy, and recruited him to come up here to Seattle to doorbell, supposedly, to canvass Beacon Hill on Saturday. And I heard about the last minute. I was driving over to Ellensburg to go to, I was emceeing the Republican Lincoln Day dinner fundraiser over there. So I couldn't go to the address that they got, but Jonathan Cho published this on X at the time, and I know I sent some people, and other people went there to the address that they gave you if you RSVP'd to it. But of course, they just kept everybody out, wouldn't let anybody come in, and the reality is it was just one big lie. Inslee and Newsom didn't canvass anybody. It was probably just there as a secret fundraiser behind closed doors on Beacon Hill, which is about as far into the wild as you're going to see Inslee or Newsom ever get. It was silly. And then they bring in Jane Fonda, of all things, to come in here and try to campaign on these initiatives in opposition to them. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're really worried about their own base, which is pretty surprising. So that's what I'm seeing. And that doesn't indicate that they think things are going well. That indicates they're concerned. But obviously, that's only going to be effective if you vote. And my encouragement to you is to vote early. Get your ballot in now, as soon as you possibly can. Hand deliver it. Get into a drop box now. Just get it out so it's in their system where observers can at least keep an eye on it. And then we'll see where it goes from there. Ben, your third question here was, have you seen Jamie Herrera Butler's 2 ads? They're great. And the answer is I haven't seen their 2 ads, probably because I don't really watch a lot of television. Now that you're asking the question, I'm kind of inclined to go and look those up and find out what they are. Again, there's no doubt that in that particular race, Jamie Herrera Butler is clearly better than Dave Upthegrove. Dave Upthegrove is a King County Council member, and burning up your forests is probably one of his highest priorities. Not that he'd come out and admit that. He's probably going to come out and say that he's trying to set aside the land for some reason, but essentially he wants to continue the previous 2 public lands commissioners' efforts to see, and maybe it's a competition between them to see exactly who can burn up the largest percentage of our state forest lands. And it's hard work to burn them all up, but they definitely are in the process of trying to find really stupid policies that will encourage and create that outcome at the end of the day. And then they'll blame it on climate change and not their own incompetence. There's another question here from KR, Clark County, Washington I'm assuming you're saying Washington Precinct 592, but you're talking about the Charter Amendments 16 and 17. I remember looking at these a little while ago, and I remember thinking they were terrible. I would recommend voting no on both of those. That's what I remember about them. But if you want to put a little bit more information in a future question about what they are at, I can explain to you why I remember thinking they were bad. I just can't, off the top of my head now, remember those two local charter initiatives down there compared to some of the other places. Let's see. Yes, Ben Garrett filled in for Thunderstriker. You guys gave Thunderstriker a hard time for asking all those questions back in the day, so it was good to see somebody else asking more questions. I always appreciate that. Conservative Thinking Mom, is there a way to bring back the numbered tab at the top of the ballot and maybe add how we voted as well? I would like to ensure that my votes were counted properly. Yeah, this has been an issue that's come up many times. For those of you who've been voting for a while, you might have remembered there was this window of time where they had this little, it was like a barcode tracking number that you could vote, and you could take that off, and you could use it as a way to track your ballot to see if it had been counted or not. The problem is, and under the guise of saying that we want to keep a secret ballot, which is a true aspiration that we have in elections and always haven't had elections in America for a long time, we don't want your neighbors or other people to know how you voted so that your voting booth decisions are, at least in theory, made with all of the truth about what you believe and not just because you feel pressured by somebody else to vote a certain way. Remember, that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of opposition to what the unions call card check, which is their effort to try to intimidate and force workers to only vote for them. And so we don't believe in that when it comes to primary elections. What voter integrity people, especially in the last 20 years in particular, have kind of been on this, going down this path, is that it seems like there's got to be some way that you can verify that the ballot that you sent in is actually voted the way you filled it out, or that somebody didn't go back and manipulate it after the fact. It's always been a concern. There's no good way to vet that right now. There's no way at all. There would be if they would let us actually audit the ballots. But remember, based on the White lawsuits in Washington State from back in 2014, I think that's the time frame that they were in, those are used as the excuse. It was like a Green Party guy, if I remember right, trying to get access to the ballots to review them, and the Supreme Court, in just an insane ruling, decided to, well, it's not just a ruling, it's also been how the ruling's been interpreted, but basically that court case is being used as the excuse for why nobody's going to let you have access to the ballots to look at them under almost any circumstances. Hand recounts, you can see them, but you have to only see them through the observer's process. There's been hostility towards observers by particularly auditors like Spokane. Vicki Dalton's just corrupt. Everything she does out there in Spokane is to try to deny people access to any kind of transparency. She doesn't let the cameras be on. She conceals a lot of stuff. She fights the observers. She pushes them away. It's just relentless. And auditors like her, who have had that same attitude, are the ones that help inspire a lot of concerns about the election process, because why are you being so hostile to transparency? And Vicki Dalton's always been hostile to transparency. It's not just King County. So we've definitely got a work cut out for us on digging into some of this stuff. And but I do believe there's going to be a way, not too long from now, when through a code that you can put in or some other way that you'd be able to actually see how your ballot actually got counted. Because today, with the modern systems they have and clear ballot scanning that they have in most of the counties, it doesn't seem like that's an impossible thing to be able to look up. And when we can start finding out, or at least verifying, I think that'll add a lot of credibility to the it'll add a lot of credibility to the election process, I think, to average people when they go to look at what's going on out there. Blue Star 245, also, hi, question down below. I'm new to the channel. I'm Thunderstriker's brother. Okay, I heard from him that he's been asking you great questions. He's currently busy right now and should be back next month. Okay, good to hear. Thank you for letting me know. Not a question, but I appreciate the update. Always good to hear from more of you out there. Salty Raiders fan, here we are. Just received voter's ballot. Vote yes to save less. Vote yes to pay less. And then Republican down the board, no to 2 state judicial cronies. And I wrote in Donald Duck, and no to local property tax cap removal. There you go. Thank you for giving me that update. I had a number of people come up to me and tell me that they appreciated my video that I put out on how I voted. It was probably most relevant to people who lived in Thurston County, but if it helped for people around the state, that's great. Conservative thinking mom, I just put not this guy and check the opposition box on the unopposed, and I'm sure you're referencing the Supreme Court justices. Watch Glen's video about filling out your ballot. Also look to the voter's guide to research. I'm assuming that's what you meant. Let's see. I'm going to jump down to a question when I can find it. Thank you for your kind words, conservative thinking mom. I'm doing my best to try to help people out there. Also, let me know if you haven't seen the studio video of the interview I did on Saturday, and I've got 2 of them properly cut out and posted as separate videos. I have a live stream, long form, unedited video. You get a chance to see if we were faking it or making a bunch of cuts. You can see that we didn't, but nevertheless, I think it's good for people to see kind of the unedited part of it, to see how what it looks like before it gets cut. So feel free to just give me any comments on that. I'd love to use that studio some more. It's really, really nice one. I don't know in the end if I would ever have resources enough to be able to get in there in any significant capacity, but I'm hoping that one way or another I can convince somebody either to subsidize me to be able to use that studio on occasion, or that I get some donations to do it. I don't know. It's just that was a fun studio to be in, and I think that I could produce a lot more interesting content sometimes with a little bit higher quality like that. It's interesting to me. Let's see. Here we go. Jack Pudler, did I miss who you were voting for in the Lands Commissioner race, Butler or Up the Grove? And I voted for Jamie Herrera Butler in the Lands Commissioner race. I voted for all the statewide partisan races this time. I voted for Republicans in all of them. And it's easy for you to look at my show and say, okay, well, when would you not vote for Republicans? And there's actually been times in the past when I haven't. I used to vote for Brian Sontag, who was a Democrat state auditor. I thought he did a good job. I actually had worked with him on a couple projects in the past. I interviewed him to get more knowledge about how that office worked. I found him to be approachable and honest, and had a desire for good government, which was not common. And so he was just a good candidate. So I voted for him as a Democrat. I've occasionally voted for some local Democrats where I live in Thurston County. There have been a couple times when the Democrat was actually more conservative than the Republican where I live. I don't know if that'll ever happen again, but it has happened in the past. And if you saw me do my ballot this last year, I did vote for Democrat Thurston County Commissioner Mejia. Now, granted, she was run unopposed, but I did vote for her. I've done work projects with her before in Thurston County, service projects, pulling ivy up north in Thurston County, and I've had I know we disagree on things, but there were some things that she was really good on. She was really good on preventing violent sex predators that Bob Ferguson and Ansley were trying to secretly stash in Thurston County, now not far from me, but in other places around the state. She was actually really good in opposing that, and which was really different than Commissioner Ty Menser, another Democrat, who seems to just love having violent sex predators all over the place, anywhere he can stuff them. And so that was a really good contrast. I also really felt like she took some tough votes under a lot of pressure to keep Commissioner Klaus the Clown, off the county commission committees just because of her weirdness and clownish behavior and ridiculous. Basically putting the county into a lot of financial risk with repetitive, just ridiculous decisions. But anyway, that's how I voted, and I don't know how I got from that, from Jamie Herrera Butler on that. But one of the things I tried to do in that video that I think the reason why people keep asking me questions on it was I was trying to keep that video short as possible and not methodically go through individually each race. And so I was just, when I was looking at it, it was just, I was voting for all Republicans in the federal races. There's 3 of them. I have a congressional seat that was up, the state federal Senate seat, which everyone has, and presidential seat. So I voted Republican in all those seats. And then the state offices as well. Now, there was only one state nonpartisan office, which I got into with the OSPI, and Dave Olson's obviously a better choice than Reichdahl, who's wrecked everything that he's touched. And the only other statewide office, of course, was the Supreme Court race with Dave Larson, who's clearly the better choice. We'd be very... Our state would benefit for having somebody like that on the Supreme Court. I think it would make a big difference. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. I watched it and may have missed that part. Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't like Jamie Herrera Butler because when she was in Congress, she voted to impeach Trump. It's true. But when it comes to, and I think that was a stupid and ridiculous and absurd vote on her part. But regardless, here's the thing. You're going to find that as people bounce around in politics sometimes, you do have to make choices between sometimes, and maybe it's not the perfect person that you'd want in there, but the reality is that the Up the Grove is terrible, and however bad you think Butler is, he's going to be 100 times worse. So given the choice there, I'd like to have somebody in there. And, there was another Republican running, Sue Kell Peterson. The policy differences between Butler and Peterson and actually Van de Weg, who was another Democrat running out of the 24th legislative district up on the peninsula, the policy differences between the three of them were actually almost insignificant. They would all generally run that office the same way. The big policy difference was between any of those three and Up the Grove. And there were some other crazy Dems too, but Up the Grove is kind of consolidated behind the Let's Burn the Forest Down crew. And so, that's who the Democrats decided to pull out of King County and run for that. I can't believe anybody would think that that's a better choice. Let's see, Jason Fisher. Hey, Glenn, haven't got notifications from your other videos. Missed them. What are your thoughts on the initiative polling? Will the natural gas one pass, or are voters too propagandized? Well, okay, here's one thing. Number one, it is possible you didn't get some notifications for a few recent videos. The two that I just launched today that were the segments from the long live stream that I had over the weekend, the live stream you wouldn't have gotten because I screwed up and I had it on private setting when I filmed it as a live stream. That was my screw up. So when I realized it, I just converted it over to public, and a lot of times that really doesn't send out a notice when you do that. The two I just launched today, you probably wouldn't get notices on those because I didn't do a timed release. I'm just trying to get them up as fast as I can finish the thumbnails and the content and get that done, and then I put it up. I have to do that stuff myself, and I can only do so many at a time. And I'm not skilled enough really to do the basic editing. You'll see there's initial intro editing and some outro editing. So I had to have my video guy do that for me today, and then today was my window of time to get that done. So he was great. We processed 6 videos like that, plus another one that I recorded about the Omni ballot situation, which I'm hoping comes out tomorrow. And I'm trying to do another recording. I was trying to do it today on the judges. I got another studio I'm going to try to borrow tomorrow morning to finish the filming on that one and pop that one out on just general judge races around the state. I don't think I can get to all of them, but I'm going to get to as many as I can distinguish between the two candidates, so that where there does appear to be a difference and you get somebody who's better than the other person, at least I want people to know that, if I can figure it out. It's not that easy on judges. Let's see. What do you foresee, Alex Brown, what do you see day one of office for each of the gubernatorial candidates to look like? So I'm assuming you'd want me to compare and contrast. I think if Bob Ferguson gets in there, I don't think you'd see a lot of differences between Inslee and Ferguson initially. I don't know what kind of staff turnover you'll see if Ferguson got in there, because there is a lot of animosity between Ferguson and a lot of other bureaucrats around the state, and a lot of people in the Democrat Party hate him. So some of that might come through in how they do staff changes. But remember, because if Ferguson got in there, that's the smallest changes I could see happening. So I would anticipate that Ferguson really wouldn't make a lot of changes if he got in there. Reichert's a different story. And it has to be. Any Republican getting in there would be the first Republican since '84. So you would suddenly have a situation where you can actually and would have to make changes. The biggest challenge the Reichert administration would have as governor in Washington state would be the inevitable fact that the bureaucracy would be universally united in trying to undermine and destroy his future. So he would be surrounded by a bunch of sycophants trying to tell him, don't do anything fast, be calm, take a year to get used to it, all that kind of stuff, which is just nonsense because Department of Ecology, LNI, DSHS, they're just going to start abusing the situation and undermining the administration as quick as they can because they're just filled with hyper-partisan, corrupt people at the top levels. Not the entry level necessarily, but the top levels are completely lost. So they're going to have to do a lot of housekeeping. There's no doubt they're going to have to fire some of those upper management. And it doesn't matter if you even need to, even if you don't have somebody to replace them, you're just going to have to clean house in that area. Inevitably, there'll be other changes that you have to do, but you definitely have some changes you have to make there. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of fighting and bureaucratic maneuvering. No different than what you saw when Trump went into D.C. Now, I don't care what you think about Reichert. If you think he's too moderate, or you think he's not conservative enough, it won't matter. They're going to be acting like Reichert is the greatest threat to the leftist agenda, of all time. So that's how the left will react, and that's how the bureaucracy will react. Let's see. Scully, I appreciated the formatting of your interview with Brian over the weekend. I could see the effort made to set up the ability to break it up for each ballot measure. Yeah, so you were just seeing the unedited version of that. I've done these videos in the past, and I didn't start out my life intending to be a video guy, right? So what happened is I've screwed up many times in the past where I thought, okay, I'm going to make 2 different videos, and I didn't leave enough sound break to make it easier for the video guy to edit, and so that makes it harder and it increases editing time. And when time is normally money, or in my case, when you don't have money in the first place, you're essentially getting donation time for you. You still are trying to make it as efficient as possible for the back-end editing. And so that's what you saw me do. If you look at the live stream, you would see me make a distinct difference between the different discussions on the initiatives, just so that I could start cutting it, like I'm doing right now, into the segments. And to be fair, my video guy did the actual physical video editing. I'm just doing the content, thumbnail, and launching of the video, which shouldn't take that long. I understand if you can do it really, really fast. I have a certain speed I can go at. I'm going to try to get them done as quick as I can. I'm hoping to get 2 more done after I'm done filming here tonight before I hit the road to go home, and then maybe 2 more later on. But I'll try to get those up as quick as I can. And then, because I referenced in the beginning of the videos that I'm going to link to all 6 of them inside, obviously when I do the first one, I don't have the rest done. So I'll have to go back in and fill in the links on the videos that I've produced later. So I'm referencing it as though they're down there in the video section description, but they aren't yet until I'm done with all of them. So anyway, I hope you like that. It was a great studio. It was really fun to be there. Let's see. Mary Elwing, I try to be hopeful, but sadly I understand Seattle's a huge voting bloc to overcome. If Ferguson gets in and starts his executive orders, do you have any ideas on his first moves? Mostly, I think Republicans sometimes don't realize the infighting that goes on the Democrat side and how low in opinion the bureaucratic establishment has over the whatever remnants of the Republican Party exist in political power. And there's essentially no political power in our state that the Republicans hold, right? They really don't. They don't hold political power anywhere. And so because of that, the bureaucrats care not at all about what Republicans think or do. They'll care a bit if the Republicans in the legislature do an aggressive job investigating something or looking at things closely or try to propose bills to make changes. They'll notice that. But there's no real impact directly on the administrative state that we have in Washington State right now. Since Kim Wyman's no longer Secretary of State, since Dwayne Davidson's no longer State Treasurer, those are the last 2 statewide Republican seats that we held. Now, remember, Rob McKenna was Republican Attorney General until 2012. So, there have been times not that long ago where there were Republicans in some of these seats, but there haven't been now for a couple of years. And so the bureaucracy doesn't care too much about what the Republicans do. However, there's factions within the Democrat Party that do fight each other. There's a distinct faction that hates Ferguson, and I mean hates and despises him. So that's what Ferguson's going to have to work on, is purging the bureaucracy from those who want to undermine him and undermine some of his power too. Don't think it's just monolithic. It isn't. My guess is that's his initial fight that he has to deal with when he gets in there. Second thing to think of is that from Ferguson's perspective, my gut's telling me that Trump probably wins the federal election. So he being Ferguson would probably want to show that he's somehow really going to fight Trump. So I would imagine that there's something that goes on there too. I would hope that if Trump decides to actually engage and start to make genuine policy changes that address some of the abuse of our civil rights that have occurred under Ferguson, I would hope that he targets our state and makes some improvements there. If Reichert's in office, it'd be a very different story. Still the same things you have to clean up, but you would actually have a friendly environment in which that could get cleaned up. Regardless of whether you agree with Reichert or not, it would be a big deal. So anyway, so we'll just have to see. Alex Brown, number one, I've paid almost $400 this year alone into the CARES Act and planning on moving from Washington, and it won't benefit me one bit. It's just stolen money. You're right, it is. The CARES Act is a fraudulent operation designed to be a fraud from the beginning. If a private business had ever provided this kind of product, the people who provided it would be sued for fraud and they'd go to prison. But when the government does it, SEIU thinks it's a great idea because it's essentially a kickback scheme for them, and the Democrats like it because SEIU funnels a lot of money to them and votes. So it's kind of a mutually beneficial destruction of the state between those two entities. So that's how it goes. Let's see, every time I don't know, have faith 365. Well, with your name, or at least the title you have in this question, honestly, it won't matter. I'm assuming not batter, but you mean matter. Anyway, every time we vote something down, they continue with it anyway. Have faith. Take your name in place. There's a little bit more involved in this than just what you see on the ballot, and there's a lot more of a plan, I think, behind it all. I don't say trust the plan. I think that's a stupid advice to give. I think you always distrust the plan, but do your best to try to make an impact. But be engaged, be involved, and don't just presume that failure is certain and you're all doomed forever. I think that's a really bad way to approach anything, and you just have to work on what you have to do. TZ Burton, good question here. I'm seeing it down below. Thank you for doorbelling, by the way, because I think canvassing does make a big difference, especially if you have to do a statistically significant enough amount. And in places like Federal Way, which is critical, it makes a big difference. And saying I door knocked last weekend in Federal Way and talked to a lot of Democrat voters who like Dave Reichert and the initiatives. That's great. If that's how they actually voted, and you get enough people like that around, then you're going to make a pretty big impact in the state. I think so. Blue Star 245. Hey, Glenn, Thunderstriker said hi to you. He wants me to say to you that he's got a special surprise for you when he comes back. So hopefully you'll check it out. He's super excited. Well, I'm excited too. That's good. We'll see. Alan K., do you ever get in legal trouble for being so forthright? By the way, no complaints here. Yeah, I've been in court a lot, sure. And mostly legal threats. Sometimes, listen, there's no pot of gold suing me. So anybody thinks they're going to get any money out of me, right? That's probably not going to happen very much. So, but yeah, there's people like to threaten. I mean, we still sort of have a free speech in this country. I realize it's under a lot of a threat. And it's actually one of the very few things that our horrific Supreme Court that we have today still kind of holds on to as a civil right in our state. No guarantees that they do that much longer, but at least for now, they're still sticking to opposition to censorship. That's the theory. So I'm interested in seeing how that goes forward. But listen, if we self-censor ourselves, then we deserve the tyranny that we'll get, right? I mean, that's the smallest step, is to just speak the truth and speak truth to power. And sure, you can get threatened and harassed over it. That's just the way it goes. I really haven't had a death threat in a while, so I used to get them more periodically, so I don't get that so much. But litigation threats are probably the more common scenario now, and a lot of people are scared of that, so they react to it. I just don't care anymore. And I try not to do. I follow the law, so when somebody threatens to sue me, it's just frivolous, and that obviously when you have terrible judges, it doesn't matter if it's frivolous. You still have to go through the process, but what goes about comes around. I don't think I'm a soft target on that. I definitely would push back pretty aggressively, and they get to decide if that's what they want to go through in coming after me. And I imagine that that's probably the same decision tree they go through with other people. But most people cave, so it's probably been an effective strategy for them. I heard about Newsom coming up crazy. I heard him talk, and he still comes off as a slippery, slimy politician. He's really good at deflecting when asked if we should elect Reichert. Oh, that's funny. Did you actually ask him that question? You have to tell me where that happened, because Newsom is slimy. I mean, he's almost like the personification of a total slime ball politician. He and Inslee are certainly peas of a pod, and Ferguson fits right in there. So it's just interesting to see these guys, how they're attracted to each other. It's just odd. The Seattle Times endorsed Butler. That kind of doesn't surprise me. The Seattle Times has to kind of pretend that they're not as corrupt as they actually are, right? They've stopped committing acts of journalism long ago, and they're thoroughly sold their soul long ago to the Democrat Party. And so what they do is they'll just pick the one Republican that they can tell their Democrat owners and funders and supporters that they'll endorse to show that they somehow have some nonpartisan bias somewhere in their bones. I just think it's funny. Can we know how things are going? I don't know what you mean by that, but Kathleen Music Driver, if you want to actually look at how many votes are coming in, I think you'll find when you look at your local auditors, it depends where you live. You can look at your local auditor's website, and a lot of times they'll give you a matchback data, is what we call it, when we're trying to see who voted and who didn't. It's always delayed by 2 to 3 days, depending on when they post it up and how on top of things that they're getting. But they'll at least tell you how many ballots have come in and whether. And I believe you can look in most counties, and if you look yourself up, you can see if they've received your ballot. So that's how you find out. Let's see, Jason Fisher, what's your thoughts on ranked choice voting initiatives in Idaho, Colorado, and other western states written to protect the establishment? Alaska has it, and it's a mess. Why approve it? Oh, I agree. I mean, I'm totally opposed to ranked choice voting. It's no surprise they would try to do it in Idaho or Colorado, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota. That's where they'll try to do things. And they're just trying to make a mess of things. Ranked choice voting's been a disaster everywhere it's tried. Obviously, the more complicated you make the voting process, the more of an insider game it becomes. It's already complicated enough. It's already made more complicated than it has to be, and yet we see this continue. So we'll see how it goes. It's a good question here. Steve Leach, is there a minimum voter turnout to validate an election? As an extreme example, if only 100 registered voters actually voted, would the election still be valid? In regular elections, there's no minimum voter turnout. There are minimum voter turnouts for levies and bonds. I'm pretty sure that applies to levies. It's funny, I'm thinking about the statute right now. I don't have it memorized, but I know for sure there are on bonds. And bonds are where you need a 60% threshold and a minimum percentage voter turnout, but it's really low. It's like 15% or something like that. Very rarely have I ever seen a bond rejected because of turnout. It's happened before, but it's not typical. One of the ways, by the way, just from a policy reform standpoint, I'm going to get into this because it applies to bonds and levies. I think the minimum threshold requirement is good and necessary. However, what I really think needs to be done is those should all be consolidated on the November ballot every year, everywhere. And the reason for that is that you don't improve voter turnout by spreading the vote, multiple special election times throughout the year. I think you need, you being us as a society and a community, we just put all of our votes in November, and then what happens is you're just going to have better voter turnout for those initiatives, for the bonds and levies. Now, the reason why they don't do that is that people who vote in November, the people who are less likely to vote in special elections, but they do vote in November, are also more likely to oppose tax increases. And so because of that, the people who want the tax cash don't want to have those special elections early on. But I think that's a direction from a policy standpoint that we could work on and actually get past it over time. VTrack, wife and I voted yes to pay less and drop ballots off in the drop box by the Thurston County Sheriff Office. No post office. Good for you. I did the same thing. Thank you. I didn't go there. I went directly. There's an election in Tumwater in Mottman Center is where the elections department is in Thurston County, and that's where they count the votes there. And so I went to the drop box that's right in front of the staff in the secure room on camera and put my stuff there. That's where I put it. But anyway, it's as close as I get to handing it in to them, but that works. Let's see. Larry Shipman, I met you Saturday night at the RNC dinner. I talked like Pinocchio. Is there any way you can redo the end of Kim Schreier's ad by putting in a rotten apple at the end? It'd be funny. It's funny. I don't. Gosh, this is a really good question. I've done parodies before, and if you were there at that event, you saw me with a SIA parody that I did last year in collaboration, the real person who did all the work, with Abby London out of Kenmore. She's great, and it was really fun. And so I don't know about taking an ad and then modifying the end of it. It could be really funny to do that. I don't have time to do it between now and the election, but might not be fun. It might not be a bad idea just to try it after the fact, and it's not a PDC violation at that point in time, and just mock it. It'd be kind of fun. Let's see. When will we start to see the results of Washington ballots come in? Well, election night on the 5th at about 8 o'clock to 8:15-ish or so, depends which county you live in and how competent they are at uploading their data to the WA Votes system. You're going to see the initial announcement at that point in time. The reality is that night they're only going to have probably 40% of the total ballots, maybe 50% at the most, already counted. It really depends on how much early voting is going on. So I would expect it to appear to be, low voter turnout, but the reality is the rest are still getting gathered and counted over the next couple days. Things don't change a lot after the first week. So unless it's within very small percentage difference, you will pretty much know who prevailed the night of the election, with the exception of close races. And pretty much people don't typically make announcements on anything that's close. Within 2 points, nobody's even talking about it until they see the next couple of batches of votes counted. I'm not saying that's a good system. I despise the late, drawn-out, multi-month Washington election system that we have here. It's the election season. It's not an election day. But you will probably know most of the election results on election night. Anything close, you're not going to be absolutely certain of for a little while. So, and you can go back and look. There was 1.9 million votes roughly in the that were processed in the August election, just a few months ago, and there were not a lot of changes from election night, and there were some. And there were, remember, there's some, but boy, they usually aren't much. It's usually about a point would be the most that you'd see changes in any big races. Sometimes local races can have different things that would impact a little bit more, but it's pretty rare. So you will probably get a pretty good sense of how things are going on election night. Michael, a friend who registered to vote in August hasn't received his ballot yet. I suggested he go to the auditor's office and ask for one. Clark County, was that a good recommendation? Sure, that's fine. Sometimes you're having problems with the post office, and that's why you haven't received it. But I would say by this point in time, Wednesday, say tomorrow, if you don't have it by tomorrow, I would go check. Unless you really live in the boondocks. I mean, the post office is largely getting more and more incompetent all the time, but you should still generally have it by now. But that's not a bad idea. They can go get it. The nice thing is at the auditor's office, they can verify if they sent it to you. Now, here's the thing. If you get both ballots, save yourself the drama and only send in one, because otherwise usually the machines will catch the fact that there's two ballots coming in. And if you vote for both of them, you're going to get a nasty letter from them and telling you, please, at least the ones that we've seen tested before, they generally see those and catch those most of the time. Let's see. Jesse Lund, great coverage over the election season this year, Glenn. Hope the results match. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've got a lot more videos I'll probably end up doing over this next week or so. And like I said, really, I've already filmed, of the 2 that I launched today, there's 4 more that are essentially the same sequence from the interview that I just did on Saturday. record one today. I got this live stream today, and then hopefully I'm going to record another one tomorrow. I'm just trying to get as much information out there right now. I'm getting inundated with a lot of requests for stuff that I just can't get to. And it's not that I'm not trying. It's just that I have limited studio time, and I'll have to, maybe I can get some articles up to cover the stuff I can't get to in the video, which will probably be what I do. Let's see. Dan Newhouse, radio ads are atrocious. I haven't seen those. I don't live in his district, but for some reason that doesn't surprise me. Jason, Glenn, thoughts on Sideshow Bob being interviewed during the police organization podcast, freaking out on his crime bill support legislative history and saying that they're lying. Oh, yeah. Ferguson is just a pathological, psychopathic liar. I mean, I can't... to know him is to not like him. I mean, that's the thing I don't think people realize. He doesn't surround himself with Republicans. There's not a lot of Republicans that have had to work with him. The ones that have don't like him, but so he's going to be surrounding himself. But there's a ton of Democrats that have had to work with him, and they don't like him either. So you're really talking about a nasty guy who's vindictive, holds a grudge, pathological, willing to break the law, doesn't care about the law, seeks power. He's willing to abuse anything. He'll say and lie about anything and everything when he can. So he certainly falls apart when somebody actually calls him on his lies. He is not a guy who cares about public safety at all. He's done absolutely nothing in his entire time in the Attorney General's office to promote public safety ever, until the very end where he suddenly rediscovers public safety and pretends like he cares about it now once again. Where was he the previous 12 years? Nowhere to be found. In fact, everything he did was to make things unsafe moving forward. But he had a lot of money given to him by his donor class, and he gets to pretend that he cares. Let's see. I'm voting in Spokane County. Need info on judges that will prosecute criminals. Okay, so I'm doing this video tomorrow on some judges. I did look at Spokane County at 2 Superior Court judges or positions that are contested. I can't remember the numbers. I didn't write that down here, but this was part of my note sheet that I had as I'm prepping for this video tomorrow. Judge Andrew Van Winkle, I think, is the better candidate in that race. I didn't write down as the person that he's run against, but I think Andrew Van Winkle's the better choice. It's a name not easy to forget. And then in the other race, Brandon Casey, I think, is a good one to choose from. I think both of them are willing to prosecute criminals. I think both of them actually understand the state constitution and constitutional rights. I think they believe in original meaning of the law. They both actually seem to have the ability to identify what a woman is, and they do seem to believe that math is real. And so those are generally characteristics that you won't find in Inslee-appointed positions. So Inslee is appointing people who don't believe in math, don't believe in reality, don't believe in anything except for the power that and the votes they're told to make. And they generally believe in trying to release the most violent criminals they can find and stick them in houses next to you. So that's their approach. It's kind of been a common theme across a lot of states. Let's see. J Magnum 76, just a friendly reminder, folks, there's still time to turn on your mail-in ballots at your turn-in, I'm assuming. Turn in your mail-in ballot at your local ballot bin rather than using USPS, which swings your envelope here and there and there and here. Yeah. Again, I'm encouraging people, vote early, get down as close to the auditor's office and put it in that drop box. Don't wait till the last minute. I just think that you're asking for trouble if you do that. Jenny Wagner, Tulsi Gabbard announced she's joining the Republican Party at Trump's rally. I didn't hear that. That must have been something fairly recent. Again, on the national level, you have all kinds of stuff. I'll do something I don't usually do because I'm not spend a lot of time obsessing over the presidential race, but I will talk about one thing that Trump did recently that I personally found, actually 2 things that he did recently, that is anybody's ever run for office. I mean, and I have never run for office at that level, of course, but you see a lot of these races around. There were 2 things that Trump just did recently that were phenomenal. Like any candidate run for office, this is how you do it. The whole thing where he went into the McDonald's and trolled, and essentially it was a giant troll on Kamala Harris, right, where he was flipping filling the fries and working the checkout window and all that kind of stuff. That's hilarious, and it was very well done. And he seemed very comfortable in that. position. And he does have a reputation, and always has since he's been on his work sites and everything, where you go down and hang out on the work job sites with the workers, talking to them about things, trying to learn how things were being built or what was happening. He seems to have a high degree of comfort level. I mean, this is a guy that owns 747 or jet airplanes and golf courses and casinos and big hotels. He's not a man of the people kind of in that sense, but he is in the sense that he's comfortable being around people like that. Whereas somebody like Kamala Harris, she lied about working at McDonald's. And, Trump never claimed he worked at McDonald's, but now he can say he did. It's just very funny, right? And he did it on her birthday, which is even funnier. But the other thing about that, made me think, I never worked at McDonald's, but I worked as a dishwasher and a busboy at a restaurant not far from my house when I was in high school. It wasn't the only job I had. I also worked at a cabinet shop, and I delivered newspapers before I got a driver's license. I did that kind of work as well. But I liked that job that I got. I minimum wage, right? It's not a high-paid job back there, and then in the 80s, minimum wage was $3 and change. But it was just a great job to have, a good starter job. You get used to showing up at work on time. You get used to following the orders they give you, kind of it wasn't just you're washing dishes, but you're also responsible for putting away the dishes, and you're responsible for, stocking some of the supplies in the back and doing whatever the owner's asking you to do. It was a good job, and I really enjoyed working. Pleasant Gardens Restaurant on the corner of Wreath and Old Highway 99. I think I drove by there not that long ago. It looked like it's been closed now, and it's been many years since I worked there, but I think they're actually tearing the place down. It's kind of sad in a way. That was one of my first jobs, working there as a dishwasher, and my cousin worked there. Actually, I think I had two cousins that ended up working there and some friends from school, and it was a great starter job. Now, I wasn't planning to raise a family and stick with that job forever, which is one of the reasons why I don't understand the foolish arguments they sometimes are making about these entry-level jobs. If my daughter is working an entry-level job right now, well, she's in high school, and she may switch and work a little bit higher-paid entry-level job, but she's working entry-level jobs. And, it's not I don't know why they attack that so much, but that was brilliant. The other thing that Trump did that was really funny was that dinner out in New York. The jokes he was making were so funny, and Chuck Schumer was sitting right next to him, and you could just see Chuck Schumer just shrink and be wanting to be anywhere else. And the fact that Kamala Harris didn't bother to show up to that was political weakness, stunning political weakness, really. And that was pretty impressive. I mean, there's a lot of other things that Trump tends to do well campaigning. And listen, this is third go-round, right? So if you're not good at it by this time and haven't worked out the processes, you never will get there. But I have to tell you that it is a masterclass in campaigning and putting the pressure on the other side. And it's amazing that it's happening because of all the attacks, the ridiculous media bias, attempted assassinations, lawfare against him, all this other stuff, and he's still running a campaign like that. And it is impressive. And it's just, you just can't deny that. And I think people who do are just defining themselves as weird, because if you're familiar with all the political process, that's impressive. Larry Shipman, thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it. Always appreciate the kind words. I am going to try to get to any of the questions. Robert Bassnight, what should we put in the write-in area if we don't want the person and if there's no opposition? I always like to mark that box, and I'll write it. It doesn't really matter what you write in because a write-in candidate can't win and won't be counted, let me just say that, unless they've registered as a write-in candidate. And if you've already run and lost in the primary, it's illegal for you to be a write-in candidate. Like in the case of Byrd, I know there are a lot of supporters of Byrd who said they were going to write him in. That's just a waste of your ballot and it's illegal. He can't do that anyway. So nothing gets counted. But if you have a write-in area against like the two Supreme Court judges, I like to mark the opposition, and then it doesn't matter really what you write in, so that it shows up as being a vote against them. Unopposed, they only got 80% of the vote or something like that, or they almost lost the opposition. That'd be funny. I don't know how. I've never seen that happen, but they won't count it even if they lose because not everybody would write the same thing in, but it'd just be very funny. Where is a good place for information on judges? I'm in Snohomish County. Well, there really is no consistent place on judges in Snohomish County, but there was a judge up there I was just looking at. Let me see if I can look over here because I did have some comments that I was putting into my prep for this video for tomorrow, and there is a judge up there in Snohomish County that I would support, and that's position number 12, candidate Mary Anderson. I would support her, actually. She's running against incumbent Whitney Rivera, which honestly, was an Inslee appointee, and I think in comparison, Mary Anderson's a much better choice. I've actually had conversations with her a few times at a few different events I've run into her at. I'm sure we would disagree on some things, but she seems like somebody who actually cares about people and wants to do the right thing, isn't part of the corruption crew, doesn't seem to be tied into the political establishment. And dear Lord, we need people like that actually in the judiciary who are, I believe, actually willing to put genuine criminals in jail, but also not be hyper-partisan biased based on whatever the political instructions are from the Inslee administration on how you're going to vote or how you're going to rule on different situations. And so I think she was the only one I really looked at up there in Snohomish County. And it wasn't just me. There were other people that have looked at this as well. Now, she's gotten the endorsement of both the Republicans and the Democrats in the past, which is interesting and uncommon. But I think she's a good candidate for that position. And you need more good people, more good judges up there, certainly better judges than what you have in there. And the opponent that she's running against has a bunch of ethical problems and some other weird issues going on. Not that that's a surprise, I guess. Let's see. Some more according to the campaign sites. Okay, this is just internal discussions of how to look at it. Upty Grove's campaign is suing the GOP to take down an ad. That's funny. Oh, man, that's a foolish step. I didn't know that was going on. I'll have to find out more about that. If Upty Grove is really foolish enough to see, he's been around the block. He knows that doesn't go anywhere. You're talking about a King County councilman who's actually been through some bitter political fights himself. In fact, his last election, the King County Council, he was saved by Republicans in his district because the Republican got bounced out in the primary, and the general election between Upty Grove and then some crazy nut job. I mean, it wasn't even close. As bad as Upty Grove is, he was running against just a total loon. And the loony vote put him at risk, and he barely won. And in his own email that he sent out to a lot of supporters afterwards, it was a few years ago now, he said that the only reason he won is the Republicans crossed over to help him, and he was concerned that he couldn't win again, which is why he essentially was jumping into a race like this. I think he was just waiting for biding his time for a race or position like this that would come up. So anyway, that's what you have to do. I blame Abel, okay, as do we all. How would you attempt to convince somebody to vote? That's a good question. I mean, there's a couple things. Number one, if that person's likely to vote in the way that it would agree with you and how you would vote, then you really do want to convince them to vote. But one of the ways I tell people right now is that where there are bad actors in the voting process, they're going to use low propensity voters and vote for them on their behalf because they're unlikely to actually detect it themselves or figure out that somebody did vote for them. So vote so that nobody else can take your vote away from you, which is essentially what they're doing. Vote because you can block the bad guy that's voting exactly the opposite of the way that you are. And frankly, no one cares that you think you're taking some kind of foolish and self-serving virtue signaling sort of position and that you're better and smarter than everybody else, and that's why you don't vote. Somebody had a stupid comment about consenting to being governed by bad guys by voting. It's just like, I don't know where people get these theories. I know where they get the theory. It's just so foolish that people actually believe it and then run their life that way. It's not the way things work. You vote. It doesn't mean that you think things are perfect. It doesn't. Sometimes you're voting for the lesser of two evils. Absolutely true. And then you work on. Voting is the least significant thing you'll ever do as a civic participation as a citizen. The other things that you have to do for the rest of the time that you're not actively voting is probably far more important than just that vote. But voting's the bare minimum, and people who don't vote are, there are people in life who basically amount to no impact at all in their community or the world around them, and sometimes people who don't vote seem to want to fall into that category. And listen, it's a free country, I understand it, but it's just a silly approach. And when we're trying, especially if we got really close calls on some things, it'd be nice to just make it a little bit easier for those of us who actually care about liberty and freedom and are trying to make a difference. Donald Larson, my mother just called and has received 2 ballots and wondering what to do with the extra ballot. I told her, turn one in and shred the other. Was I wrong? No, you're right, but hold on to the other and find out why you're getting the second one. Typically, it's because you had some contact with the state agency that by default and in secrecy to you went and registered you to vote against your will or knowledge and didn't realize you'd already registered to vote. So make sure that the one you vote on is the one that most correctly represents your data. Sometimes there'll be something different about it, or it's a screw up. If it's a King County, it's policy there to screw up. So, but you did the right thing. Only vote the one. Dan Shea, is there any way we can hold our WDFW accountable for the decision to go against the biologist's recommendations? Yes and no. I mean, I'll tell you what, if you did have a Reichert administration, one of the things they'd have to do is clean house at the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife because they have abandoned science, common sense, reasonable planning, just all things related to reality. This agency has lost its way. I don't know if it's just that they're hiring too many Evergreen State College grads or if delusion is the primary goal, but some of the most ignorant people when it comes to with the wilderness and managing wildlife populations seem to go and gravitate to that department now. Department of Ecology wasn't enough. They're crossing over to the WDFW. They have to do major housekeeping and cleaning on that place. So documenting that stuff is very important. So making sure that it's not just somebody doing it, some generic person. Identify the person, the anti-science people at Fish and Wildlife, and start exposing them. In California, there seems to be a scam with the home insurance companies dropping people in the state picking up the policies. Is that happening here in Washington? Michael Case. Good question. It's not happening yet. If the state continues with insane policies that encourage more forest fires, then I could see something like that happening. The last thing we want government to get involved in, federal or state level, is insurance. I just don't think it's a good idea. It's ridiculous. I think it's a really bad idea. And as bad and incompetent and terrible as insurance has become, and it had, listen, I just spent a good chunk of yesterday, actually, with my insurance agent. Didn't have to do with home insurance, it was car insurance stuff, but just trying to pull my hair out over the ridiculous rates increases that have occurred and then trying to find ways to mitigate those costs. I appreciate people who are trying to do that because I know what that's like. That is a scam, and California's not alone. We really used to see a lot more of that in areas that were prone to flood down in the southeast, like Florida area, or along rivers like the Mississippi and the Missouri. You did see more of that type of scam going on there, and they shifted it to this federal fund. But in Michael's case, in California's case, they've just decided to make it impossible to issue insurance there. And that's a problem. And the state picking it up is a terrible idea. If I self-censor and J Magnum 76, if I self-censored myself any less, I'd be getting a knock on my door from the fine fellows representing the FBI concerning my terroristic views. Well, okay, then that might be a little different. I always think you just want to have common sense. And everybody's made this mistake before. Well, they'll say something in public, and they'll think, God, is that really the best way for me to express myself or explain what I was thinking or what I wanted to do? Probably it wasn't, that kind of thing. So I think having that thought process, what is it that I think it's a scripture that says, better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. The world would be a better place sometimes if we did that a few times. There's also, I know somebody told me one time that if they're really angry, they really purposely pause and count in their head, a few times before they actually make a response. And that helps them sometimes moderate their language they use. What are your thoughts on, Jason, what are your thoughts on the Colombians' weak endorsement of Sideshow Bob? It read like they were pulling teeth. Yeah, they're probably not alone. Listen, everybody with common sense who's had any interaction with the AG's office under Bob Ferguson's administration, they know that there's nothing really good there about what he's done and how really useless and wasteful he's been in that office. So a self-serving, self-promotion program, that's all it's been. Nobody has ever abused that office to the degree that he has. So even his quote-unquote supporters aren't terribly impressed. I'm just impressed that they didn't get threatened enough that they didn't go a full-throated announcement, in their support. But he's gotten very timid weak support generally. Ranked choice, Larry Shipman, ranked choice voting is exactly that. It ranks. It stinks. Yep. Jeff Wright, thank you for your chat and your time, your effort. Very much appreciated. Spokane, Washington, formerly Would-Be Island resident. You went from the wet side to the dry side. Biochild, don't quite understand how Washington is a surplus. I've read about $18 billion last year. Yet they say there isn't enough money to fund all the programs they want to fund. What happens with that surplus? Well, basically, they take the surplus money and they squander it on whatever program happens to exist to allow the politicians and the bureaucrats to justify their empire building or keeping the gravy train going. Some of it does go into the rainy day fund, but that will only last a little while once the economy actually tanks. And so, we'll just see how it goes. Listen, these guys lie all the time. There's no such thing as them ever have. They want more money than the world has the ability to produce, and they can always come up with an excuse and justification for it, and that's just how government rolls, and that's how it's rolled for a long time. Nothing new, it's just we're adding extra zeros today. I did question about the illegal immigrants and how it's affecting Washington State. Do you know anything? Well, it does impact crime, it does impact the prisons, it does impact the use of many different welfare programs. It certainly overwhelms the hospitals, but some hospitals are affected more than others. It really just depends on the demographic profile of the immigrants in the community in which they've come in. Again, not everybody and not every single time, but it does affect people in a lot of areas. And of course, they're all registered to vote in Washington. I don't have a clear indication of how much they do vote, but they all are registered to vote. So there's an impact. We may not be as bad as Arizona or California or Texas or, Ohio, but it still happens here too. Let's see. I've heard about the houses that are run solely to house illegals. Owners are paid to do so. This is towards the Canadian border, so I don't know how bad it is elsewhere. Well, it's going to be, they have it down in Tukwila and Renton area and Burien, if I remember right, probably in Seattle. I believe that Newsom interview was done by a Como reporter, Paul Rivera. Brandy Cruz talked about on our show yesterday. I'll have to see that. I haven't seen that, so I'm glad that you mentioned that to me. Missy, are you going to do a live broadcast on the night of elections? Sorry if it has already been asked. I just got here. Well, I'm hoping to. My plan is to do that. I'm hoping to do that up north, like with a bunch of other people, so I'm not alone in a studio like this doing it, because I think this is a little more boring if I do it in a lone studio. But I haven't worked out all the details yet. I'm hoping to know by next week. Let's see. If the fraud has not been corrected, jumping in the neck iteration of selection is crazy at best, Sebastian. I don't know what you're talking about there. Sorry. Jenner B, 1982. Why don't they give live or daily results of the election as ballots are accepted? Why wait until election night to post what's already been received? This is a good question, and I'll explain why they don't do it. Years ago, I don't remember what year it was, but there was a lot of, the media actually got in a lot of trouble by early announcing election results from some states on the East Coast before the West Coast was done voting. And it was argued, and probably legitimately, that because they were making statements like, oh, it looks like this guy, I thought it was for a Republican, because they usually won't complain if they did it for a Democrat. I thought it might have been one during one of the Bush elections. Anyway, they were announcing early. It was argued that it reduced voter turnout on the West Coast, which would have helped the Democrat. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. And after that, everybody's kind of changed how they announce elections because they don't want to discourage voting in other parts of the country. And so the same thing is true a little bit with the collection of mail-in ballots. Now, listen, I don't like the mail-in ballot system. There's a lot of problems with it, but they're collecting them right now, right? And so, in theory, they aren't counting them until Election Day. But they're doing that so they don't discourage people from voting because X, Y, and Z is going differently than they'd want, or it's going the way they think it's going, so they don't think it matters. People frequently will not vote because they think, oh, my guy's going to win, and everybody says they're going to win. It's the red wave conversation, which is stupid. And so they think something like that's going to happen. So anyway, that's how it goes. Let's see. Here's one right here. Reichert's a lame candidate. Way to go, GOP, it's frustrating. Well, people participate in the primary, and if you don't like some of the candidates, find better ones to run. I mean, that's just how you have to do it. And they can't just, I'm going to tell you, if you can't raise money and you can't campaign, you don't start early enough, and you don't have a support base, and you make lots of mistakes, these are all things that torpedo campaigns. They just do. There's no way to avoid it. It's not fair. It's not, it's just the way it is. You have to be able to campaign. It's not just governing. You have to be able to campaign. And, that's just the way it is. I mean, you can like it differently, but that's just how it goes. Anything we need to be especially aware of in Grays Harbor County? Well, I didn't truthfully pay attention to your commissioner races. I know you're a neighboring county of where I live in Thurston, but I haven't looked at your Thurston County. I haven't looked at your commissioner races. So I would look very closely there and ask around for how to vote there, because I think maybe two of those positions are up out there. I'd have to look and double check. Glenn Vanderwell, how about Snohomish County judges? They don't list endorsements in the pamphlet anymore. That's true. The only Mary Anderson was the only one who I'd looked at up there who I thought was a good judge, at least a better judge option than who she's running against. So I think she's a good choice up there. I'm not aware of the other Snohomish County judges that are being contested. I think that's one of the only ones that are being contested up there, which is kind of ridiculous. Got our ballot Saturday, dropped them off at a Dropbox on Sunday. They're received yesterday. Amazing. It is. I mean, the post office is a big random guess, but anyway. Robert Brooks, yeah, I've heard that Bob Ferguson throwing his temper tantrum when he's asked about public safety failures. That's him. And I'm glad that Brandy Cruz put that out about 10 hours ago. I'll have to catch up on that. Let's see. Thank you for your answer. Let's see. I'm going to catch a couple more questions, guys, before I shut this down and try to get back to my finishing up a couple more videos that I'd like to get launched tonight, even before I leave. Biochild, for the tables on impact on CCA, spending eliminated versus spending transferred. Would these two add together for the total spending if gas tax continues? Basically the Climate Commitment Act, which is what he's referring to, and what he's referring to is the initiative I-2117, which is going to repeal the Climate Commitment Act, which is the secret gas tax scam that's passed on to people who have heating bills or use fuel through this carbon credit auction program, and that cash is basically passed on to the consumer, so it increases the gallon of cost of fuel, and it'll go up even more in the future. The money, whatever money that's been tossed out to like confetti around the state, it's about buying votes initially, and then after that it's about picking winners and losers and just keeping them going and jacking up the budget so that they'll say, oh, we can't get rid of it because we've got so many amazing things. If the initiative it goes through, that money goes away. They don't keep stealing it. They may still keep funding some of the better connected scams that they were going to fund in the first place. But that's it, and we'll just have to see where it goes. Of course, they want to tax us by the mile. Forget that. Yeah, they've tried to do that federally, too, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere yet. There are still good people at Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. They're smothered by legislative directive. Chevron doctrine is going to have a trickle-down effect, my bet. I think so. That's true. The other thing is your senior management at Fish and Wildlife are not good. So that's where we got a problem, and that's where we really have to really clean house. Let's see. Yeah, that's funny. Let's see. I'm going to try to skip down here to see some of these. Pollock versus Riley. I'm not sure what race you're talking about there. Mary Silva has a chance at District 1. I'm assuming you're talking about Ledge District 1. I'd have to look that up. The Republicans have a tough time in Legislative District 1, so that's pretty tough. Don't hold on to your ballot very long. You're more likely to have the post office lose it or misstamp it and say it didn't get there in time. So, get it in as soon as you can. I wouldn't wait that long. Let's see. Yeah, vote yes, pay less. We're going to end with that last comment here because I am about 15 minutes over time. Guys, thank you so much for watching tonight. I hope you like the live stream. Getting back on our regular Tuesday night schedule is good. Let me know. Oh, this is funny. This just came in last minute. I think it's funny. Steve, are you under an NDA, non-disclosure agreement? I met you at Costco Gas in Tumwater a couple years ago. No, I don't have any NDAs that I'm aware of. I mean, there's information I don't hand out for the left to look at, but I'm certainly not under a formal NDA. I used to have some NDAs when I worked in startup companies, but they're always time limited, right? You'd get information about something you aren't supposed to reveal. There's just things I might be doing or planning on with projects or whistleblowers or things I'm not going to go public with, but that's very funny. It's just a very funny question. All right, guys, listen, thank you guys so much for watching tonight's videos. Appreciate you logging on to the live stream tonight. Feel free to share this with other people who may benefit as well. Let me know what you think about the Let's Go Watch the interview. I just was lucky I got that interview with Brian Haywood. You can kind of tell from the video he's tired. He just got back from a business trip. And the studio that I was borrowing just to test out and hopefully I can use it a little bit more in the future, was very generous in letting me try that out as a test video to see how well that would work. But let me know your thoughts on that video and the content and the interview itself. I find it to be pretty good. So anyway, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Share this as far and wide as you can get it. And with that, guys, have a good evening. We're 2 weeks out from election time. Be safe out there and hope all's well. And I appreciate everybody for logging in and asking all those great questions.